The Wishes of Silence. Part 1. The Whispering Lamp. Ethan had always been an unbeliever, a skeptic of everything supernatural. Growing up in a world of science and logic, he found comfort in facts, data, and numbers. The idea of ghosts, spirits, or anything of the sort had always seemed laughable to him. But now, standing in front of the old antique shop in a forgotten part of town, his views were about to be tested in the most horrific way imaginable. He wasn't here for the strange items that filled the cluttered store, nor the odd trinkets that seemed to hum with an unsettling energy. No, Ethan's visit was the result of a simple yet powerful human desire: greed. He had heard rumors of a lamp, a curious relic that, according to whispers, granted the most vivid fantasies. Fantasies so real they felt like memories, so intense that the lines between what was imagined and what was real began to blur. And for a man like Ethan, whose life had long since lost any sense of excitement or fulfillment, this was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. The shopkeeper, a frail man with dark, empty eyes, greeted him with a hollow smile as he pointed to the far corner of the shop, where the lamp sat. Its brass surface gleamed despite the dust and grime surrounding it. Ethan could feel the weight of its gaze even before he reached it, but he was determined. His hand closed around the cold metal as soon as he approached, and a surge of energy pulsed through him, a strange warmth that made his skin tingle. "Take it," the shopkeeper muttered, his voice hoarse and quiet. "But remember, be careful what you wish for." Ethan barely heard him. His mind was already racing with possibilities. What would he wish for first? Wealth? Fame? Power? It didn't matter. He was in control now. With a simple rub, the lamp hummed, and before Ethan could take a breath, a figure emerged. It was a man, tall, shadowy, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. A genie, of course. But there was something different about him. Something off. "You have 3 wishes," the genie's voice boomed, filling the small shop with an eerie resonance. "Choose wisely, mortal. For every wish exacts a price." Ethan, too eager to question, barely registered the warning. "I wish to experience the greatest adventure. Something like no one else has ever experienced." The genie nodded, a slight curl of a smile playing on his lips. "As you wish." The world around Ethan shifted. The walls of the shop melted away, replaced by towering mountains and an endless horizon. The wind howled, and the ground trembled beneath his feet as he stood in a vast desert, golden sand stretching out for miles. He could feel the heat, the weight of the sun bearing down on him, the overwhelming sense of awe and excitement. It felt real, so real. He was no longer just imagining the adventure, he was living it. But something began to change. As the wind swept through the desert, Ethan felt a growing fatigue, a heaviness in his chest that hadn't been there before. His breath came in shallow gasps, his legs aching as if he had been walking for days without rest. The thrill of the adventure was slipping away, replaced by a strange, gnawing exhaustion. Suddenly, the landscape shifted again. He was no longer in the desert but in a vast, dark forest, the trees towering over him, their branches twisting like gnarled fingers. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the sound of his own footsteps crunching on the undergrowth. But as he walked deeper into the woods, the fatigue intensified, his limbs growing heavier with every step. In the distance, he saw a figure, a silhouette against the moonlight. It was a woman, her face obscured by a hood, her eyes gleaming in the dark. She beckoned to him, and despite the dread pooling in his stomach, Ethan felt compelled to approach. "Help me," she whispered as he drew near. "The price of your wish has been paid. You cannot escape what you have asked for." Before he could respond, the ground beneath him cracked open, and a force pulled him down, plunging him into darkness. Ethan awoke with a jolt, his heart racing, his body drenched in sweat. He was back in the antique shop, the lamp still clutched tightly in his hands. But something was different. He felt weak. His muscles ached as if he had run a marathon, his head spinning with the remnants of the nightmare. The genie stood before him, his eyes dark, his smile no longer comforting. Your first wish has been granted. But be warned, every wish you make takes a piece of you. The more you wish, the more you lose. Ethan's mind reeled, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he tried to process what had just happened. What did you do to me? The genie's smile widened, his voice a whisper in the shadows. I granted your desire. But every fantasy comes at a cost. And for you, the cost is your very essence. Ethan stumbled back, clutching his chest, the realization sinking in. He had been warned. The genie was not a benevolent force, and every wish, every moment of joy he sought, was slowly draining him of his strength, his vitality. But it wasn't too late. He could still stop. He could still reverse it. 2 wishes left. The genie said, his voice laced with malice. Choose carefully, mortal. You're running out of time. But Ethan was already too far gone. The thirst for more had taken root, and no matter the cost, he couldn't resist the pull of the lamp. The next wish, whatever it was, would be his undoing. He had already lost. And he hadn't even realized it yet. Part 2. The Price of Glory. Ethan's mind raced. He could feel it now, the weight of the genie's warning gnawing at him like an invisible parasite. His body, though still intact, was weakening with every passing second, as if some unseen force was draining the life from him. The exhaustion, the aches, the sensation of being hollowed out inside. But his desire, his hunger for more, remained unshaken. He glanced at the genie, who stood silently, his dark eyes gleaming with unspoken knowledge. The lamp rested heavily in his hand, and the remnants of the first fantasy, its vivid images, swirled in his mind. He had wished for the adventure of a lifetime, and it had been given to him. The sensation of running across endless desert sands, the thrill of standing on the edge of a mountain, the fierce loneliness of a dark forest. They were all real. But now, Ethan felt it. It wasn't the joy of living those moments, it was the agony of knowing they had come at a terrible cost. And worse still, it was an addiction. I'm not done, Ethan muttered, gripping the lamp tighter. The idea of escaping his own misery, of filling his hollow self with more, seemed more tempting than ever. The genie didn't need to say a word. He could already see the gleam of greed in Ethan's eyes. Your second wish, the genie said, his voice carrying that unnerving weight, has the potential to either end your suffering, or doom you beyond repair. But know this, mortal, the price grows steeper with each desire you seek. What will it be? Ethan barely heard him. His mind was too consumed by the need for more. He had tasted the power of the fantasy, felt the rush of the experience, and now he couldn't bear to let it slip away. Not yet. Not until he had everything he wanted. I want to be invincible, Ethan said, his voice tinged with desperation. He wanted to feel powerful, untouchable. Nothing could hurt him, nothing could stop him. He wanted to have everything, to control everything. To be more than just a man. He wanted to be something eternal. The genie's eyes glowed with a dark amusement. Invincible, you say? To have no fear of death, no weakness to exploit, no end to your existence? Ethan nodded, his heart pounding with anticipation. The genie raised his hands, and the room around them seemed to distort. The very air hummed with energy, and Ethan felt a strange pull deep within his chest. The warmth in the lamp flared, and for a brief moment, Ethan thought he could see something moving within the brass confines, a twisting, serpentine shape that slid and slithered through the metal like a creature coiled in waiting. Then, with a flash of blinding light, Ethan felt it. His body surged with an unnatural strength. His senses expanded, and the world around him became clearer, sharper, like a veil had been lifted from his eyes. He could hear the smallest sounds from miles away, see the finest details in everything around him. He felt unstoppable. He was more than just human now. He could do anything. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt true power. But as the rush of invincibility coursed through him, the realization began to seep in. The physical sensation, the invulnerability, the endless energy, was not the only thing that had been granted. His mind, too, was affected. The fantasies, the ones he had experienced in the desert and forest, began to twist. He could still see them, still feel them, as if they were creeping into his thoughts like an infestation. The feeling of being trapped in a vast, open field without escape, the overwhelming isolation that gnawed at his soul. The hunger for adventure had turned to a terrible emptiness. And now, with his wish granted, it was as if every moment of power only deepened the hollow within him. He looked at the genie, who now stood before him, his expression unreadable. "Do you feel it, mortal?" the genie asked, his voice laced with quiet amusement. "The price you've paid is not just in physical form. It's in the very essence of your being." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The power, the invincibility, everything felt like it was slipping away. It wasn't a rush anymore. It was a void. A silence, creeping deeper and deeper into his chest, threatening to swallow him whole. And the worst part? The worst part was that it was his fault. He had wanted it all. He had asked for it. The more he wished, the more he gave, until there was nothing left. The lamp, still burning with a strange energy, felt heavier than ever in his hands. "Two wishes," the genie intoned, his voice cold now. "Two wishes, and this is the result. Would you like to make your final wish, Ethan?" Ethan trembled. The rush of power still coursed through him, but it was fading. Like a dream that had lost its vibrancy, it was beginning to distort, fray at the edges. He felt it, the price of every wish, draining him, leeching him dry. I don't want it," he gasped, holding the lamp out in front of him. "I didn't know, didn't understand what I was doing. Please, just make it stop. I want to be normal again. I want to go back." The genie's smile was slow, almost pitying. "You cannot undo what you have asked for. The price is paid, and there is no refund." Ethan's heart pounded as the truth of his situation settled over him. He had been warned. The genie had made it clear from the start, and yet, driven by his own desires, he had ignored the warning. Now he was trapped, both in the fantasies that had once promised him joy and in the reality that was slowly tearing him apart. The genie's form flickered, and for a split second, Ethan saw something darker lurking behind those glowing eyes. It was as if the genie was feeding on him, drawing power from his pain, his regret. "You still have one more wish left," the genie said softly, his voice thick with something unsettling. "What will you choose? Your soul, or what remains of it?" Ethan staggered back, his mind a blur. His body felt like it was breaking apart, pieces of himself slipping through his fingers. The lamp grew colder in his hands, its warmth fading to nothing. There was only one choice left now. His body, his soul, his life, all of it was at the mercy of the genie. He had made his bed, and now, he was going to lie in it. But how would it end? What would the genie ask for in return? Ethan didn't have the strength to find out. As the lamp began to dim, the room around him fell into darkness. Part 3, The Final Wish. Ethan's body felt numb. The invincibility, the strength he had once felt coursing through his veins, was gone. In its place, a deep, gnawing emptiness hollowed out his chest. His breath came in shallow gasps as he clutched the lamp, its brass surface now cold and lifeless, just like him. He had once believed that power, true, unshakable power, was the answer to everything. But now, as he stood in the suffocating silence of the shop, all he could feel was regret. The reality of what he had done, of what he had become, was too overwhelming to process. The genie's dark eyes glowed in the dim light, watching him with a quiet, insidious satisfaction. The air grew thicker with every passing second. The silence pressed in on him like an invisible weight, suffocating and relentless. "You still have one wish left," the genie reminded him, his voice soft yet laced with a cruel edge. "But be warned, mortal. Your final wish comes with a price that will eclipse everything you've already lost." Ethan's vision blurred as he stumbled backward. His mind raced, but there was no clarity. There was only a sharp, all-consuming desire to be free of the torment he had brought upon himself. What had he hoped for? What had he truly wanted? Invincibility, adventure, power, all of it had been a fleeting illusion. Each wish had stripped something from him, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but an empty shell of a man. The genie stepped forward, his form flickering with a strange energy. The shadows seemed to bend around him, stretching and warping as if the very space itself was bending to his will. "You can wish for anything," the genie said, his voice now low and coaxing. "One last desire. One last chance to undo everything, or perhaps to embrace your new reality. But know this, your soul is already mine. And with your final wish, it will either be consumed entirely, or you will live with the consequences for eternity." Ethan clenched his teeth, his hands trembling as they gripped the lamp. He had to make it stop. He had to undo this, whatever this was. The crushing weight of the genie's words pressed on his chest, each breath becoming harder to take. His mind raced, trying to hold on to the scraps of clarity that still clung to his thoughts. But what could he wish for? What was left? A part of him wanted to escape, to end it all, to undo everything he had done, to return to a time before the lamp, before the genie, before his desires had spiraled out of control. But another part, the part that had been driven by ambition and hunger, whispered that perhaps there was still one final thing he could achieve. One last wish that could make him powerful beyond measure, something that would ensure he never felt weak again. "I don't want this anymore," Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't want any of it." The genie's smile stretched wider, a glint of dark amusement flickering in his eyes. "Too late for that, mortal. You can never go back. You can only move forward." The genie paused, his expression shifting, as if he were savoring the moment. "Choose wisely. The cost of your final wish will be greater than you can possibly comprehend." Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. He could still feel the genie's power, a dark, suffocating force, pressing in around him. He wanted to run. He wanted to escape this nightmare, but the lamp in his hands kept him rooted to the spot. His mind spiraled, unable to find clarity. In the end, it was the darkness inside him that spoke the loudest. It was the desire that had started this whole twisted journey, the desire for control, for power, for the ability to shape his world on his own terms. And now, it was his final choice. "I want to be free of this," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "I want to be free of you. Free of everything." The genie tilted his head, as if considering the request. "Freedom," he mused. "A common wish, but one that comes at a steep cost. Very well. I will grant it, but know that freedom comes with a price you have yet to understand. The air around them shifted, darkening as the genie raised his hands once more. The lamp in Ethan's hands began to vibrate with a low hum, its surface crackling with energy. A wave of heat washed over him, and for a moment, he could feel the very fabric of reality shifting around him. The world seemed to warp and bend, as if it were unraveling before his eyes. And then, in an instant, everything went cold. The warmth of the lamp vanished, and the hum of energy ceased. The darkness around Ethan lifted, and he found himself standing alone in a desolate landscape. The world was empty, a barren wasteland stretching out in every direction. No sky, no stars, just an endless, dead expanse of cracked earth. Ethan blinked, confusion flooding his mind. He turned around, but there was nothing. No genie. No shop. Just emptiness. He stumbled backward, his heart racing. What is this? Where am I? A voice echoed from the silence, its words distant and distorted. You wanted freedom, mortal. But now you are truly free. Free from time. Free from consequence. Free from life itself. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His mind couldn't process it. He had been granted freedom. Freedom from the genie, from the lamp, from the nightmare he had created. But at what cost? He was alone. Completely and utterly alone. There was no escape. No way out. He had wished for freedom, but all he had done was trap himself in a void, a place where time didn't exist, and nothing could ever change. He had no body, no soul, nothing. He was just a whisper in the darkness, a lost echo of a man who had once been so sure of what he wanted. The genie's final words lingered in his mind, a cold reminder of the truth. The price of freedom is forgetting everything you once were. Ethan stood in the endless void, his thoughts fading, his existence slipping away, piece by piece. The genie had won. Part 4: Echoes in the Lamp. Time had no meaning here. Ethan drifted in the dark. He wasn't sure if he was standing, floating, or lying motionless on some unseen surface. He no longer felt the pull of gravity, or the throb of blood in his veins. No heartbeat. No breath. Just stillness. Utter silence. And yet, he was aware. At first, his thoughts had raced, screams swallowed by the blackness. But over time, those thoughts became less frantic, more detached. The pain of regret dulled into a numb ache. The ache faded into fog. Eventually, the fog became light. But even in that state of fading identity, something lingered. A sliver of consciousness. A memory. A voice that wasn't his. I want to be free. The echo of that final wish throbbed endlessly through the void. Mocking him. Twisting. Reminding him of what he had chosen. He had thought freedom meant release. From the genie, from the curse, from the suffocating spiral of desire and punishment. But this wasn't freedom. This was exile. He had been cast out of the world, stripped of everything. Flesh, time, light, warmth. Only awareness remained. And yet, not entirely alone. A ripple. A twitch in the dark. Ethan's mind sharpened, ever so slightly. There, again, something moving in the nothing. Something new. He couldn't see, but he felt it. A pulse. A vibration that hummed beneath whatever passed for ground in this place. It wasn't a sound he could hear, not with ears. He didn't even remember what ears were. But it throbbed through him like a second heart. Then came the whispers. They started faint. Shivering syllables slithered across the void, sliding over the edges of his awareness like oil over water. Can you hear them? We all made the same wish. We all thought we could win. Now we are the lamp. And just like that, Ethan understood. This place, this void, was inside the lamp. He was inside the lamp. Or worse, he was the lamp. He wasn't alone because dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of voices whispered all around him. Each was a soul like his, once flesh and blood, once desperate for something more, now disembodied, dreaming, regretting, wishing. They had all made the final wish. And this was the cost. Each whisper began to take shape, forming images in his fading mind. A gambler who wished to always win. A soldier who wished to undo his worst mistake. A widow who wanted her lover back. A child who wished to grow up fast and never stopped growing. They were all here. And their stories were playing on repeat, like records stuck in grooves carved by desire. Nightmares posing as dreams. All of them still experiencing, endlessly. Some blissful, some horrific, all false. Ethan felt them brushing against him, phantom limbs, fragmented minds. Each one a prisoner within themselves. No boundaries between them. No walls to separate thought from thought. Every moment Ethan tried to think of himself, a dozen other identities leaked into him, bleeding through like ink in water. He clung to whatever he had left. But then, just as he felt himself dissolving further, something shifted. A light. It was faint, distant, barely a pinprick. But it was real, and it was growing. Ethan reached for it. Not with hands, with will. It pulsed as he reached, and suddenly, pain, hot and searing, like a brand pressed to his soul. But it focused him. For the first time in what could have been centuries, or a moment, Ethan remembered his name. The light grew. And then he heard it. A voice not from within the lamp, but from without. A woman's voice. "You have 3 wishes," she whispered, tentative and trembling. The light became a flood, pouring into the void like fire through cracks in stone. And then Ethan understood everything. Someone was holding the lamp. Someone had summoned the genie. A new host. The whispers around him howled. The other souls, the other dreamers, screamed in a silent panic. The cycle was starting again. Another mortal had been ensnared. Another victim lured by temptation. But this time, Ethan felt something else. The genie was drawing power, not just from the new master, but from him. Ethan was being used. His energy, his soul, his story, it was part of the genie's illusion. The fantasy. He was the fuel now. And as the fantasy began to form, he saw it with a sudden, horrifying clarity. A woman, alone in her apartment, cradling the lamp. She wanted to see her dead child one more time. The genie smiled. Ethan felt it, not saw it, but felt it. And the fantasy began. But something was wrong. Ethan was still aware. Still awake. Not completely submerged. A new thought warmed into his mind. What if he could speak through the fantasy? Break through the illusion? Warn her? He focused. Pushed. At first, nothing happened. But then, within the fantasy, he saw her. The woman. Cradling a sleeping boy. Her dead son. Ethan felt the heat of the sun, the smell of the ocean breeze, the softness of the boy's curls beneath her fingers. And he felt his own voice curling in with the wind. "It's not real." She blinked. Looked up. "He's using you. Don't make another wish." The scene shimmered. The beach blurred. The boy's face rippled like a reflection in disturbed water. Then, from the void behind her, the genie's presence loomed. Furious. Confused. Ethan pushed again. Louder. Clearer. "It's a lie. Each wish takes you deeper. He'll trap you like he did me." The woman's expression twisted. Her eyes widened with terror. The fantasy began to break down around her, the ocean turning to black sludge, the sky melting into ash. Her child turned to wax, his limbs stiff, his mouth sewn shut. And then she screamed. The lamp dropped from her hands. Back in the void, Ethan felt it. A jolt. Like thunder through the dark. The connection severed. He wasn't free, not yet, but something had changed. He had interfered. He had resisted. The genie roared in fury, his essence boiling through the dark like oil on fire. The other souls screamed again, but this time, not in fear. In hope. Ethan had found a crack in the prison. He had reached through the fantasy. And now he had a new purpose. He was no longer a victim. He was a virus inside the dream. And if he could do it once, he could do it again. Part 5. The One Who Dreams Awake. The void was no longer silent. Ethan felt the hum of the lamp's magic pulse through him once more. The genie's presence, once towering and omnipotent, now quivered with uncertainty. Ethan had become something the genie could not control, a splinter, a crack in the carefully woven illusion of eternal suffering. Something had changed. The balance had shifted, and Ethan wasn't the only one who had noticed it. The genie's voice boomed in the dark, thick with malice. You think you have power? The genie's words twisted in the air, sounding like a thunderclap. You are nothing. You are a prisoner, bound in the very essence of this lamp. You cannot escape. You are mine, mortal. Always. But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. The desperation had turned into something else. Something sharper. Something cold. His desire had shifted from merely escaping to changing the rules. He had tasted the power of breaking through, of reaching into the fantasy and manipulating it. And now, with the genie's hold weakening, he understood the lamp was just a cage. It was a doorway, not a prison. The whispers that had plagued him, thousands of lost souls, each one a desperate dreamer, were still there. But now they were not just voices. They were allies. He could hear their pain, their yearning. But he could also hear their hopes. The flicker of rebellion had taken root among them, just as it had in him. As he floated, trapped in the dark, he focused. Focused on them. He could feel them all, each lost soul still tethered to the lamp. But now, the tether was loose, fragile. He could almost touch them. And for the first time since he'd made his wish for freedom, Ethan realized he wasn't just trapped in the lamp with the genie. The genie was trapped as well, bound to it. His power came from the cycle of wishes, the endless flow of desires and regret. And with every soul that entered, he grew stronger, feeding on their desperation, feeding on their yearning for more. But Ethan, and now the others, were breaking that cycle. He had broken it. Ethan reached deeper into the web of souls, feeling the pull of each prisoner, their thoughts, their wishes, their broken dreams. And with every soul he touched, the weight of the genie's power weakened. The lamp, the place where the genie was forced to dwell, was cracking. It was possible now. It was possible to escape. The genie's laughter echoed through the emptiness. You are a fool, Ethan. You cannot destroy me. I am the lamp. You are nothing but a fleeting thought in the mind of a dying god. But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. The genie's words had no power here. He was the one who had reached through the fabric of the dream. He was the one who had interfered. He had made a wish for freedom, and now he would make another. He reached for the final thread of the lamp's magic. And then, with all the strength he had left, he spoke the words that would tear the illusion apart. I wish for them, the lost souls, to be free. The lamp trembled, its brass surface glowing with a sickly green light. The genie's laughter died in his throat as the magic began to shatter. Ethan could feel it. The walls of the lamp were collapsing. The eternal cycle of wishes, of souls being consumed, was breaking apart. And just as the genie screamed, his form flickering like a flame about to go out, Ethan made his final wish. "I wish to wake up." And with that, everything stopped. Ethan gasped. His eyes flew open, and he sat up in a panic, his heart hammering in his chest. His body felt solid, warm, real again. He was alive. He was in a bed, the smell of fresh linen, and the faint sound of traffic outside the window filling the air. It was a world he recognized. A world that wasn't empty. A world where he wasn't trapped. He ran a hand through his hair, blinking rapidly as he tried to make sense of what was happening. He wasn't in the void. He wasn't in the lamp. His body, his real, living body, was here. He had escaped. But as he slowly steadied his breath, something caught his eye. The lamp. It sat innocently on the dresser across the room, its brass surface gleaming faintly in the morning light. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. There it was. The lamp. The same lamp that had started it all. The one that had trapped him in that hellish cycle of wishes and dreams. But now, it didn't seem so menacing. Not in the way it had before. He hesitated. Could he trust this? Could he ever truly escape? A sudden knock at the door startled him. "Ethan?" A familiar voice called from outside. "Are you awake? It's time for breakfast." His pulse quickened. The voice. It was his wife, Sarah. He could feel her presence through the door, warm and comforting. His heart surged. She didn't seem to know. She didn't seem to remember the lamp. Ethan slowly rose from the bed, feeling the weight of everything that had happened in the last moments of the dream. The infinite nightmare he had endured, the wishes, the desperate escape, all of it felt so real. And yet, now it was fading. He stepped toward the lamp, his fingers trembling as he reached for it. Was this another illusion? Had the genie tricked him one last time? Or had he really woken up? His hand hovered over the lamp, then slowly pulled away. No. He couldn't risk it. Not again. He had made his final wish. The lamp wouldn't claim him anymore. The knock came again, this time louder, more insistent. He had to make a choice. A real one. He turned toward the door, the weight of his decision heavy in his chest. His life, his future, was out there, waiting for him. But the lamp whispered. And just as he reached for the doorknob, he glanced at the lamp once more. For a split second, he thought he saw something move inside. But no. This was his life now. And the past could stay where it belonged, in the dark. He opened the door. And Sarah was standing there, smiling. "You okay?" she asked, her eyes full of warmth. "Yeah," Ethan said, forcing a smile. "I'm okay." And as he stepped into the sunlight, leaving the lamp behind, he felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of peace. Maybe freedom really was possible. Maybe he had won. Or maybe, like the whispers of the souls he had freed, he would never truly be rid of the lamp. But for now, he had his moment. His real moment. And that was enough. End of story.